Hello and welcome back to the NOTCAST, episode 288. It is May the 13th, 2023. And if you have working eyes, you will notice that this is being shot in daylight, which means this is the first time in a long time this one's not being shot after the sun has gone down. It's a Saturday afternoon. I'm a little poorly, which is why there's been a little break in transmission, but I'm back now. If this is the first one of these you've ever seen, probably not the best place to start. However, if it is, have low expectations and prepare to be pleasantly surprised by how not awful this is compared to some other YouTube videos which I've seen, naming no names. Today I am going to be talking about 9 Inch Nails and How to Destroy Angels and Trent Reznor and the years 2010 to about 2013. And the reason that I'm going to be doing that is because I am talking chronologically through the complete discographies of a number of bands and showing off bits of my record collection, talking about the history that relates to that at the time that it happens, and generally kind of monologuing, really. Hopefully this will be not boring, but according to people I live with, they're all boring. So I guess you have to smoke them when you got them. So this is going to feature the soundtrack album to The Social Network by Oscar-winning Trent Reznor. Also going to feature the first EP by How to Destroy Angels, The Social Network soundtrack, an unusual cover version, a second soundtrack, and the album by How to Destroy Angels as well. When I talk chronologically through every band and their career, and I go through it in order, I kind of focus in or zone in on periods of time and kind of go, today I'm going to be talking about, well, I was going to say Chinese Democracy, but Chinese Democracy has been everything Guns N' Roses have done from a studio capacity since 1993. So perhaps not a great example. But I'll be talking about an album and singles and tours and live shows and concert videos and badges, posters, stickers and t-shirts, as Dire Straits once had it. And I try to wear a t-shirt that's appropriate to the time of the event. I am wearing a Pet Shop Boys t-shirt here for their 2011 touring period, which ties in with when this kind of era is, although I was a bit more of a fan of the Pet Shop Boys than I was of 9 Inch Nails in 2011. And I'll be pretty honest about it, this period I was not the biggest 9 Inch Nails fan I have ever been. You need a bit of context around this. So 2009, 9 Inch Nails brought their touring era to a close effectively with the last date of the Wave Goodbye tour, which I think was at the Wiltern in around about September the 22nd-ish, 2009, playing a 3.5-hour show. My life had changed an awful lot since when I first heard 9 Inch Nails in 1990 compared to 2009. That 19 years, that was a period where I went from being 17 or 16, depending on your point of view, to being 36. That's, half of my life. And in that half of my life, everything had changed. My hair had all fallen down to my chin, for a start. My world, my life, my home, everything was different. About the only thing I shared was the same name and the same prescription for my glasses. Nothing was the same. So think about when I first listened to them, 16 years old, I was struggling greatly with the key existential questions around my life, like this: well, who am I? What am I going to be? Where am I going to live? Who am I going to love? Am I going to love? Am I going to have a job? What's my future going to look like? And I always think of life as kind of like a blank slate of granite, is that you chip away all the bits that don't look like your life until it resembles the shape that you want your life to be. And then after that, your job is maintenance. Effectively, you're a gardener, because the grass keeps growing and you have to kind of shave bits of your life to keep them the way that you want them to be. Doesn't always work, of course, but it's how I think about it. So when I think about Being There, the Peter Sellers movie, or the phrase "the constant gardener," I don't even remember the film, but that's how I think about life. It's gardening, it's maintenance, it's maintaining the shape of the life that you're expected to live and working with it. So obviously, from being a 16-year-old, no job, no love, no home, no career, no idea what I was going to be when I grow up, or if even I was going to make it that far, to 2010, where I suddenly realised in 2010 that I pretty much arrived at where I thought my life was going to be. You know, I was living in this house, the one that I'm in now, been there now for 17 years. I was in a relationship which was good and positive and worked to both of our satisfaction. I'd been, you know, I'd become a parent. I'd established a career path. Admittedly, I wasn't going to be a poet, dreamer, rock star, but I was going to be somebody who was going to be able to take the skills and the aptitudes and the personality that I had and directed it towards kind of like turn the skill set that life had given me into something that I was able to pay the bills with, which not everybody can do, by the way. So I'd kind of resolved some of those issues. And to me, the existential crisis that was being a fan of Nine Inch Nails, you know, being a fan of things like, you know, The Slip and Pretty Hate Machine and everything that went with it, I kind of thought the lyrical obsessions of those albums are very, very clearly kind of directed towards questions of identity, of being, of the who, of the where, of the what, of the why. And I thought, if you haven't been able to solve those questions in 20 years, the years between the ages of, let's say, 16 and 36, then you're either not very good at that, or you don't necessarily, no matter what answers you find to those questions, they're not going to solve the key questions. Again, there's that song "I've Never Been to Me," where it says about, well, I've been, you know, everywhere, but I've never been to me. No matter where you go, there you are, as they said in Total Recall. But at the same point, if you're not solving the questions, if you're not finding out, well, who am I, who do I want to be, what kind of life do I want to have, I ended up just kind of thinking, if you're endlessly circling the same few existential questions, and you've been doing that for 20, 25 years, then if you can't find the answers, then are you asking the right questions? I don't know. And so for me, I kind of drifted away from Nine Inch Nails. And then Nine Inch Nails drifted away from being Nine Inch Nails, and obviously played that last show and split up. And things went quite quiet. There was a degree of uncertainty around, well, what's going to happen, and where's it going to go next, and how are you going to approach your life. And I became a parent for the second time. My life became very different. I wasn't super focused on being a fan of Nine Inch Nails at this point, and I think a lot of bands fans get to that point. You know, the Cure's fans in 1996 probably had that same kind of degree of kind of thinking, well, am I going to grow out of this band? Because you associate the band with the adolescent anxieties that you might have had. Smiths fans, for example, Morrissey had a huge kind of, you know, career dilemma around about the year 2000. Exactly the same kind of thing as when you've been making records for about 20 years. That's the type of thing that happens. And so for a Nine Inch Nails fan, you know, there was only so many times you could ask that question before you started to think, what, am I asking the right questions? I don't know. And so when Trent brought Nine Inch Nails to a close, I was quite excited about what would happen next. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen next, but what I didn't want him to do was to be like an industrial AC/DC, which is endlessly writing the same 10 songs around the same subject forever, and never kind of progressing along any further, being no evolution. Luckily, what happened next was the first answer. So there was Trent had met and I think married his partner, Mary Queen, who he's with now, and I think has been with for, if not 20 years, then not far off it, and formed a band called How to Destroy Angels. How to Destroy Angels, by the way, is a slightly different configuration. So it's Trent Reznor, Rob Sheridan, who worked on the band's visual identity, Mary Queen Mordig, who is a vocalist, and Atticus Ross, who some of you in the Nine Inch Nails fans world will know from playing on this album, Ghosts 1 to 4, as well as being a studio technician and having been part of a band called 12 Rounds, I believe, as well. And they released their first EP, the How to Destroy Angels EP, in June 2010. There's vinyl editions. I wasn't buying vinyl at this point, and I don't particularly care too much to track down a second-hand copy of this EP for, you know, £100 or whatever the cost is, primarily because why? I don't love it enough, really. I've got better things to spend my money on. And if Trent wants me to buy them, he can repress it on vinyl like he can Year Zero and The Slip and Ghosts. And How to Destroy Angels, it came as a download. It also came as a CD and as a 12-inch. It's a 6-tracker featuring Mary Queen Mandig, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Rob Sheridan became part of the group's official lineup later on. Effectively a trio. And mixed by Alan Moulder, who has mixed a lot of other stuff, and written, arranged, produced, performed, and art directed by How to Destroy Angels. Rob Sheridan is listed as a member on the inside of the gatefold. First and foremost, taking their name from a song by the band Coil, or an album or a release. Coil, of course, also did the remixes of Closer, which also became the Uncoiled and Recoiled EPs many years later on, but also apparently quite influential. And this is a 6-track EP. I think the first of the first thing you can see actually is a very distinct and different artistic identity to Nine Inch Nails. So whereas Nine Inch Nails had a very dark, very austere kind of identity, How to Destroy Angels is probably, if I can be so blunt, it's probably, at least around about this period, was more geared towards brutalism. More geared towards a distinct visual identity that you didn't really see anywhere else. So the brutalism, for example, the use of what looks like former communist structures. There's a wonderful word for it, the name of which I've forgotten, but memorials to people that have died in former communist countries, which have become now dilapidated over time. And what you can get a sense of is that there's a separate identity that exists in there, alongside what looks to be a huge brain overseeing the reality. Now, this 6-track EP, by the way, has an alternate cover. If you turn it over to there, a huge cube floating in space surrounded by mountains. It's unambiguously a little bit weird. No two ways about it. And it was also reflected in the contents, which sound like Nine Inch Nails, but not. So the traditional chord structures that you will have in Nine Inch Nails, the song structures that you will have, the instrumentation leans in towards a more atmospheric, less straightforward, less conventional verse, chorus, verse structure, but at the same point also with female vocals. So the 6 tracks on the EP. These ones are The Space in Between, Parasite, Fur-Lined, BBB, The Believers, and A Drowning, a number of which do appear on the How to Destroy Angels only album, Welcome Oblivion, which, let me just quickly check. I don't think any of them do, actually. No, they don't. Well, there you go. That's me told. So none of the tracks on this appear on the album. So this is an essential purchase if you're thinking of going all the way in with Trent and Co. And it's a really interesting listen. You can hear through the absence and the presence of other things what each individual member brings to the group. The strange thing is, I think that probably from a lyrical and a melodic vocal perspective, because the vocals are sung by Mary Queen and not by Trent, even though the vocals sound like Trent wrote them, they're very clearly not Trent at all, which kind of makes you wonder what the division of labour within the group is and how it works. Although it's credited to all 4 of them, and obviously you can say, well, if the guy's making music with his wife, that's probably because the 2 of them have a fair bit in common. What you also have is something where it feels very clearly that there's a different identity there that's there to try and differentiate itself from Nine Inch Nails, which very clearly comes out in the vocals. And vocals are the one things that generally you cannot fake at all in any group. You're either a good singer or a bad singer. No amount of effects pedals is going to hide that. It's going to perhaps obscure it a little, but it's not going to hide it forever. The next release that we had was the first Trent Reznor solo release, the soundtrack to the film The Social Network. Here is the 2020 vinyl repressing, and here is the original 2010 CD. As you can see, the cover art is ever so slightly different. Now, there was a sticker on the front of the CD. I put the sticker over the mouth to imply some form of censorship. So when I take the stickers off the covers and I put them onto the covers of the records, because I think the stickers are an inherent part of it, I think about where's that sticker going to sit best. So, for example, probably How to Destroy Angels, I've stuck that very distinctly underneath the moon there, because we read left to right, I've put it on the left so that it's one of the first things you see, and I could have put it there. In fact, in retrospect, I might have put it there, but then it would have eaten into the image of the buildings there. And the sticker I've stuck on the social network is over the mouth of the lead actor, Jesse Eisenberg, playing Mark Zuckerberg there. And again, you've got the kind of like a packaging here, which is designed to kind of represent a version of a reality. So the packaging, by the way, this features a form of design which is called glitch, which is used by Rob Sheridan, or was used by Rob Sheridan, where effectively you print it out and then you rescan it in, and you bend and you scrape it, or you go into the source code and you change the JPEGs around to distort and pervert the original image, so that there are random elements of glitching that sit within it. You know, it's kind of implying that from a base level, is perfection is boring and imperfection is more interesting, which is true, because perfect people have everything sorted out, and I'm just jealous of them. I probably shouldn't be, but I am. So, yes, there we go. So, Social Network is the first soundtrack album by Trent and Atticus, the same performers who were on the Ghost album. And it sounds to me like it's a continuation of the themes that had been dropped like confetti in the original Ghosts release. There's about 80 minutes of music on here, which is on, I think, 3, maybe 2 LPs. Yeah, 2 LPs on a 180 gram vinyl for the reissue. This is quite affordable and quite accessible these days, or on a single CD. And this has a number of tracks which you will have heard in many other places. Hand Covers Bruise, for example, is used quite a lot in soundtracks, and Needle Drops. I think it was played live by Nine Inch Nails a couple of times as well, 16 times in 2014, according to my notes, which I've got on a bit of paper over there. This won a Golden Globe, it won an Oscar, which means, unfortunately, I have punched an Oscar winner in the testicles. Sorry about that, Trent. I didn't know. It was a very long time ago, and it was an accident. There was just some guy rolling around to my head at the gig. Happened to be you. Sorry about that. And we also had, so this won the Golden Globe and an Oscar, which, when I listen to it, seems to me more to be a recognition of his work overall over a period of time, as opposed to the specific score. It's a very unusual score, actually, unlike most soundtrack scores, which is what John Carpenter calls Mickey Mousing, which is where it is designed around a certain set of things that happen at a set time. This kind of score is more around themes that accompany the images, and where the themes actually sit inside those images is not actually essential. You don't have to lock down a final cut at all to do the type of score that Trent and Atticus do, the same way as the scores that Tangerine Dream and John Carpenter did in the 80s as well. They were mood pieces that were designed to soundtrack visual paintings, as opposed to try and tell you what to feel at any given point in time. I really like the soundtrack to The Social Network. It's also used quite extensively on the Steven Soderbergh re-edit of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's turned the film into black and white and rescored it with Trent Reznor music. Very, very interesting to see, by the way, if you get a chance to see it. And that was 2010. 2011 was a little bit different, actually. There was a number of releases from Trent & Co. that came out. The first and most obvious one, I think, there was the download to the theme of Call of Duty Black Ops original soundtrack, which is an instrumental piece. There was also a new Nine Inch Nails track breaking the theme, which I wasn't really expecting to have happen at all. It appears on this album, Achtung Baby Recovered, which is a song-for-song replication of multi-artists doing cover versions of the tracks from U2's album Achtung Baby, which you will have heard of. This features track 1, Zoo Station, performed by Nine Inch Nails. I really, really wasn't expecting that at all, is to get Nine Inch Nails on here in the slightest. And they're one of the very few artists who I think don't appear on the photo on the back. You just get their logo. It's a very interesting cover version, but again, completely unexpected. It kind of made me think, I thought Nine Inch Nails were done. I thought Nine Inch Nails were through and everything was going to be Trent & Co. in future. That's not kind of what happened at all. So this is recorded early 2011, performance by Trent Reznor, programming by Atticus Ross, mixed by Alan Moulder, and engineered by Blumpy, whoever Blumpy is. Fly safe, all those who fly in her. And this is a strange remix, straight re-recording of Zoo Station, which obviously Nine Inch Nails have never played live, but was completely unexpected. I thought, if you're going to bring back Nine Inch Nails for a one-off appearance on a compilation album doing a cover version of a U2 track, maybe that means Nine Inch Nails aren't over. Which is a curious place to be, having said goodbye, waved goodbye to a band, and then to kind of think, actually, they're not kind of over yet. What we did have next was in November 2011. This is an exhaustive beastie, the triple CD soundtrack to the David Fincher film The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And this is probably appropriate, by the way, to bring out the Blu-rays of Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. For Social Network, there is a alternate mix of In the Hall of the Mountain King, or for those of you particularly advanced years, the theme from Manic Miner. On the Blu-ray, an alternate cut of that track on here. There's also a For Your Consideration soundtrack Oscar CD, which features, I think, some different tracks, actually, and some unreleased versions, which were then kind of re-recorded and rearranged for the official soundtrack release. The same kind of process happened with Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. Again, we had mood pieces as opposed to individual songs. We had, and this is the staggering thing, is this is quite long as a film. I think it's 158 minutes. I think the soundtrack is longer than the film itself because it features about 36 or so instrumental, largely instrumental tracks recorded by Trent and Atticus, with guest appearances by a couple of others. There is a track on here, What If We Could, that was played live by Nine Inch Nails 3 times in 2013, and it folds out. There is a vinyl edition of this, which was very limited, sold for hundreds of squillions of dollars, and still does. But it's a largely instrumental triple LP, triple CD of stuff that sounds like Ghosts and sounds like a brilliant soundtrack album, but not perhaps fully compelling. It's great for working with. It's great for spreadsheet activity. It's very unusual in so much as there's no album I've got that's quite like this. It features a cover version of Immigrant Song, the Led Zeppelin song, sung by Karen O from, I think, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. And also the last track on it is Your Love Strong Enough, which is by How to Destroy Angels. And Is Your Love Strong Enough is a cover version of a track by Brian Ferry and David Gilmour, taken from the soundtrack to the 1985 Ridley Scott movie Legend. Strange film, strange soundtrack, very curious, but well worth getting up. This has a total of 39 separate songs on it, and it feels more like a long, dark epic of an album as opposed to a cohesive soundtrack, because you kind of listen to it and go, I've got no idea what the film is going to be. Genuinely don't. The whole thing was by Trent and Atticus. Obviously, Immigrant Song has vocals by Karen O. Is Your Love Strong Enough has How to Destroy Angels, which is Trent and Atticus plus Rob and Mary Queen. There are also vocals on 4 songs by Mary Queen Mandig, and those songs are 11, 23, 30 and 35, by the way. So those are I Can't Take It Anymore, While Waiting, Millennia and A Pair of Doves. Alongside Is Your Love Strong Enough. And the tracks, because of the speed in which the film was scored, were mixed by either Michael Patterson or Alan Moulder, again engineered by Blumpy, with the art direction by Rob Sheridan. I've got to tell you, the art direction for this is absolutely top notch. It feels like, aside from the fact that you've got a very specific image there, it feels like you're actually listening to an instrumental triple album of unusual, dark and slightly threatening songs, as opposed to a soundtrack album to a film that you've seen completely and utterly. And this, by the way, is on Mute Records, as you can see by the use of the logo on here, and it comes in a triple CD case alongside a lovely frosted kind of PVC outer sleeve, which, when you look at it like that, has the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo written on it. You put the sleeve in here, and then it kind of creates, it's a very tangible, actually very lovely bit of packaging, and the vinyl version, which again I don't have, is even better. It looks like a Nine Inch Nails instrumental album, and then you kind of look at the back sleeve there, which features a sticker alongside the film credits, etc. Really interesting triple album soundtrack, but as I said, not Mickey Mousing, not telling you exactly what you should feel or anything like that. There was another track which was released by Trent, which was on the Dave Grohl's Sound City compilation album. Oh, let me see if I can find it. Yes, here it is. It is the Sound City Recordings album by Dave Grohl, recorded at Sound City Studios to go alongside the Sound City documentary. This features 11 songs of Dave Grohl with various people, including at one point Paul McCartney's on here somewhere. Cut Me Some Slack by Paul McCartney, Dave Grohl, Chris Novoselic and Pat Smear. Effectively the closest you'll get to a Nirvana reunion. But track 11, Mantra, Dave Grohl, Joshua Homme and Trent Reznor on there. Apparently Trent also did some work on Era Vulgaris era Queens of the Stone Age, but I don't like Queens of the Stone Age anymore after he kicked that woman in the face on stage, because that seemed to be shockingly rude, and I don't have to be a fan of a band if the guy behaves abominably. So yes, not a fan of that, but on the other hand, there's an extra Trent track there on the Sound City reel-to-reel soundtrack CD. Right, 2012. Things were a little bit secretive in Nine Inch Nails land. We knew that Trent was recording, and he recorded a track called Everything, which was going to go on Nine Inch Nails' Greatest Hits LP, but that is for another episode. And on November the 13th, 2012, released the download EP called The Omen. And The Omen features a number of tracks that appeared in remixed or original forms on the Welcome Oblivion album. Welcome Oblivion is the debut record by How to Destroy Angels. And obviously that's the second band formed by Trent, Atticus, Mary Queen and Rob Sheridan. The Omen EP was largely a download release. It features Keep It Together, which is on Welcome Oblivion, Ice Age, which is on Welcome Oblivion, On the Wing, which is on Welcome Oblivion, The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters, which is not, a track called The Loop Closes, which is the penultimate track on this album, and a song called Speaking in Tongues. It wasn't released as CD, it was released as a 12-inch, and the reason it was released as a 12-inch and not a CD was because 4 of the songs from that EP appear on Welcome Oblivion. And Welcome Oblivion was released on March the 3rd, 2013. And it's the only album to date by How to Destroy Angels, and it's I think it's an essential part of understanding the Nine Inch Nails story, but it's not something which you need to sit down and think, I absolutely need to listen to this. It's not your essential day one, first purchase, getting into Nine Inch Nails. You know, it's kind of like a second division release because it's not Nine Inch Nails. If you're deeply into Nine Inch Nails, it's a very, very interesting release. It's essential that you hear it, but it's not a number one absolute must-have up there with, you know, Pretty Hate Machine kind of release. Again, the theme from this cover is the glitch art, which again is manipulated imagery that's kind of scanned in, mucked about, JPEGs are played with, those type of things, to create a sense of like if you've got a different relationship to reality. So it's around a representation of reality where you look at the world that exists and you kind of go, right, so is what I'm seeing of this reality accurate and fair and realistic? And kind of the distortion around it is used to kind of make you wonder or question how true is the information my eye is actually seeing. And of course, since we live in a post-truth reality, that's a fascinating kind of approach to take to it. The CD has, I think, 14 songs on it. The LP has 16. And the LP features 2 extra tracks, The Province of Fear and Unintended Consequences. Again, the LP is quite deleted now, so you'll have difficulty finding a copy of it. The CD is much easier to get. Also cheaper and smaller if you are space conscious like I am. And there's a track on here called We Fade Away, which features Alessandro Cortini, member of Nine Inch Nails' live band, who also plays on some Nine Inch Nails material. And it also features the lyric, which is "I can't tell if I am dreaming anymore," which is a lyric which is also used in the track "Burning Bright, Fields of Fire" by Nine Inch Nails from their later releases. I think How to Destroy Angels as an album is very good. It's very clearly Nine Inch Nails influenced, because obviously the one guy that is Nine Inch Nails is on all of the songs on Welcome Oblivion. You can tell in the way it's written, the way it's constructed, the sound, the use of the production, and so on. But at the same point, it feels like there is a guest vocalist. Now, there is a couple of tracks on here that I really, really like. The Leap Closes, which was played live in 2013, alongside the track Ice Age. And Hallowed Ground, actually, is probably my favourite. It's the last song on the album, and it's just this glorious kind of fade away into nothingness. Very good record, not amazing. And obviously, because, as I said, I was drifting away from Nine Inch Nails, I was not particularly close to this album at the time that it came out. I heard it and I was like, well, it's quite good, but have you got any new tricks? What else can you do around that? So that is Welcome Oblivion by How to Destroy Angels. The band played one tour, about 13 shows in the US, culminating in a performance at the Coachella Festival in 2013. And then Trent made an aside in an interview that he was working with another band. And that is the next episode, because then that other band you may have heard of are quite good indeed. That is the weird and slightly dark kind of years when nobody was really sure what was going on. So obviously we had Welcome Oblivion, we had Sound City, we had The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I really shouldn't have put it back on the shelf there. Obviously Achtung Baby, The Social Network, and last and not least the debut EP by How to Destroy Angels. It was a fairly busy period, but as you know, I'm a lyrics guy, and if your songs don't have a huge amount of lyrics, it's difficult to latch onto them and talk about them in any substantial fashion. That is today's episode, talking about Nine Inch Nails, How to Destroy Angels, and those weird post-split years. I really thought that perhaps it was all over. Sometimes you think about a band and you kind of go, well, am I a fan of this band forever, or am I a fan of this band for a period of my life? And sometimes that phase lasts 2 or 3 decades. I didn't know if I was going to love Nine Inch Nails again after that split. It felt to me that perhaps what had happened is, you know, the band had been very good, they'd done their time, they'd served their purpose, and they'd helped me through a certain point in my life, but that they weren't necessarily going to be there forever. But remember, Nine Inch Nails isn't just for Christmas, they're for life, kids. And there we are. Right, I'm going to wrap up here. Thanks for listening to me babble on about this for 33 minutes. It's just gone 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I am going to go and sit out in the garden with some sweets, and I'm going to read a book and have a drink. So if you're at home watching this, take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, as the Manics would have it. And hopefully see you all soon. Okay? So, bye. Yeah, I should switch it off, shouldn't I, really? I really should do that. Right, I better go and press the button. I feel like I'm in Ferris Bueller's now. What are you still doing here? It's over. Go home.